Men in Black International is the fourth installment of the Men in Black series. It's not really a reboot of the original trilogy because Emma Thompson's Agent O returns for this film from Men in Black 3, so it's more of a spin-off continuation. This film focuses on a new agent, Agent M, played by Tessa Thompson. She just got recruited by MIB after she successfully tracks their secret location down. She gets sent to the London branch of MIB where she meets up with Agent H, played by Chris Hemsworth, and once these two team up, an instant game of pass the MacGuffin off occurs, and now they're traveling to other places to track down this MacGuffin and get it back before the villains can use it for evil. Men in Black is a really fun movie. I don't think it's an amazing film or anything, but it's a really cleverly made film by Barry Sonnenfeld. Very fun. Men in Black 2, not so much. It kind of took a stumble there, and it's not really as focused of a plot as the first movie kind of was. And the third film, I think, is actually kind of underrated. It's not as good as the first movie, but I think it's a really solid movie that doesn't get enough credit for what it did to close out that original trilogy. But when I heard that they were going to make another Men in Black movie and that they were going to bring on F. Gary Gray to direct, I was honestly really excited for it because there's a lot you can do with the Men in Black series that you could really take it in some interesting directions, as we've seen with Men in Black and Men in Black 3 at least. And F. Gary Gray, when it comes to his action films like The Negotiator, the remake of The Italian Job, and The Fate of the Furious most recently, he can make something really fun and exciting, and I thought for sure that's what he was going to do here. It seemed like an excellent choice. They got two people to play the agents, Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, who are fantastic actors and people that we know work well together if you've seen Thor Ragnarok. They're very funny together in that film, and that was a really funny movie, so it should work out very well with these two here. There's really no reason at all for this movie to fail. I mean, sure, the writers of it are Art Markham and Matt Holloway, who wrote recently Transformers: The Last Knight, but they wrote Iron Man 11 years ago. Needless to say, I was disappointed by this one. What I said before about it seeming like a great idea that F. Gary Gray was directing, honestly, I could barely tell that this was actually a film he made. And I also didn't think it was made by someone who was copying Barry Sonnenfeld's original style with the first three movies. It felt like just a guy who vaguely knows about Men in Black and is just kind of working for hire made this film. And they made it as efficiently and competently as possible, but with no real directorial flair or excitement to be found at all. There's really only one action sequence in this film that I really liked. It involves two fistfights going on at the same time at this island held by this alien three-armed lady named Rizza, played by Rebecca Ferguson. Those two fight scenes that they had there going on at the same time, I thought that was the most exciting part of the film, and it was also the most interesting part because that was a part where they were actually kind of diverging more into what else there is in this world other than agents walk up to a place you wouldn't expect to find aliens. There's aliens, and they talk for a bit. Rebecca Ferguson's character Rizza kind of is the head of this crime syndicate, this intergalactic crime syndicate, and going into that kind of aspect of it a little bit more would have been a lot more interesting, but for what they had here, at least it offered up a really fun action scene. Every other action scene in this movie is either bland or it has some really bad logical errors. Like there's this one action scene that happens earlier in the film involving the shootout in the middle of this London street. I love how in this scene there are no people to be found, only when the fighting actually starts. Like conveniently when the fighting happens, that's when no one comes out alarmed at what they're hearing, like no one just shows up. I thought back to that one scene in the first Men in Black where Agent J is getting on top of the car and shooting his weapon, and it causes like this big explosion, everyone's concerned, and Agent K's like, you have to be careful of that because now we have to send in the containment unit to really neuralize all of them. And in this action scene, it would be a really good idea to kind of introduce that. Like there's a car that gets blown up and it just skids on some of the building walls, then it just gets stuck inside one. It'd be really good to have some people running out scared, not knowing what to do, and then the MIB containment units have to keep tracking them, make sure they're all neuralized and they forget everything they see. But no, just as soon as they start shooting at each other, and need I remind you, the action sequence isn't really all that three-dimensional, it's just bad guys are over on this end, good guys over here, fire gun, oh that doesn't work, let's go to the car, put something else on, and come back and do the same thing. That's really all there is to the action scene, while the bad guys just get shot at and then don't really get taken down by it. It's a really boring sequence. It'd be really fun to have some civilians walk out. Like, be careful of them, we gotta make sure not to kill them, but also make sure they don't remember any of this. But they don't do anything like that. There's another scene, the motorcycle chase, that Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson are involved with. They have to ride this alien motorbike because they're being chased around this little city. And throughout it, everyone is seeing this motorcycle, because it's not like the car in the original film that has like a neuralizer under it, so every time it flies by someone, it just flashes them. It's not like that. It's not made by MIB, so it would be a really good idea to be like, okay, how are we going to neuralize all these people whilst getting chased and getting away from here? But they don't really focus on that at all. There's one moment where they crash down and they neuralize a small group of people, but then they keep going. People still seeing them as they go, but they don't neuralize them at all. There's tons of people that now know about Men in Black, probably. So now this motorcycle chase that could have been fun and exciting now not only feels kind of bland as far as a filmmaking perspective, but also from a logical perspective, none of it is really adding up. And worst of all, the climax action sequence of this movie is so bad. They try to go for an emotional moment in it too, and none of it really connects. None of the action moves that the characters do are all that exciting. None of the lines that they're saying are like, yeah, get him! It's just kind of like like we're just kind of passing through. And that's the worst part about this movie for me, is that none of it feels very lived in. For a movie called MIB International, they seem to just kind of stay on Earth, and we kind of forget that there's other worlds out there that are threatened. Like, there's something that happens in the movie, and I was starting to think, oh, what are the intergalactic repercussions of this? Because something happened to these characters that really shouldn't have happened to them, and they were kind of framed. So I was thinking, like, okay, what's going to happen now that MIB's kind of royally messed up because of reasons? But they don't really focus on that at all. It's really all stuck on Earth, and it feels very contained and small scale now. But it's called Men in Black International. Just because you go other places other than New York City, that's not really enough. Because every time you go somewhere, like in a London, or if it's in the middle of the desert or the small island, it still doesn't feel like much is all that happening that's different. It feels like they're going to a place, you wouldn't expect to find aliens there, but if you go in this little secret corner, there's an alien there. And it's just that they're offering really nothing new here. And I was also really disappointed in the characters in this movie. The only character that I'd say was actually like great throughout was Pawnee, voiced by Kumail Nanjiani, and even this character, you can tell very obviously, there's really no reason for him to be in the entire movie, but he's there to sell toys. He's the funny, small, comedic relief character, but I give this character a pass. Despite how obvious it was that they were just trying to sell stuff, I'll give him a pass because he was funny. Kumail Nanjiani is very good at being really funny, so I gave this character a pass, and I liked him overall. The two characters, Agent M and H, played by Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson, they're obviously working well together. Obviously. Their acting is not the problem here. It's just that their characters really have nothing to work with, and that makes their chemistry not as good. It doesn't even come close to what they had in Thor Ragnarok. Tessa Thompson's character, they breeze over her reasoning as far as why she's so motivated to be in MIB. And even when they show that flashback that we saw in the trailer where she's a young girl, there was an alien incident, parents got neuralized, but the agents missed her, that's also similar to the action scenes that we saw, filled with some logical errors made on their part. You know, like the agents didn't go upstairs, try to check on the girl to make sure she's actually asleep and not looking at them from the window, a window that you can just look up, be like, oh, there she is, she sees us. She tries to apply to the FBI or the CIA, but they get rid of her because she talks about Men in Black, so she's delusional. So we never really see her do any physical training like an agent would do, like a police officer or a CIA agent would do, but she's instantly recruited just because she was able to successfully get inside MIB headquarters. That's pretty much the only reason why. They pretty much skim over any other training that she could possibly have, because before that, she's pretty much not ready to be an agent at all, except she's kind of smart and was able to get by our security system. So throughout the movie, as much as Tessa Thompson was good, I felt really disappointed in her character overall because anything that was happening to her, I wasn't impacted by it. I didn't really feel like her character was changing all that much from when we first saw her, and it just was really underwritten overall. I guess that's a good word for the two main characters in this movie, is underwritten, and that's another problem I had with Chris Hemsworth. His character actually impacted the plot of this movie much more than I thought, so I was honestly kind of surprised by that, and I thought it would be a really interesting take on this kind of goofball, arrogant agent that's kind of out there doing his own thing because, you know, he's the best, he thinks he's the best. The way they kind of take the plot of this movie, I was honestly surprised that I wasn't impacted more by it, and it was literally all because of two things. One of them is that it's underwritten, and you barely feel like, as I said earlier, it doesn't feel lived in, it doesn't feel like any true emotion is really being sparked up at all. But number two, they set up basically the rest of the plot of this movie with him. He is kind of the star of the scene, and after the scene was over and they cut to 20 years earlier and they cut to the Tessa Thompson flashback, I was pretty much thinking, okay, well, now I think like one of two things just happened here, and that's why they cut away so abruptly, and that's why we're going to see them years later. And then a character comes back from that opening scene, says one line of dialogue, and I was like, oh, Got it. I know exactly what's going on. I know who the secret bad guy is. I know basically what's going to happen now. And I was right. It was so predictable, and I could see right through what this movie was trying to go for. But you could tell that they felt more clever doing it than they actually were. So that was the biggest disappointment for me, is that not only did the movie feel underwritten and it didn't feel like a lived-in world for Hemsworth to actually kind of have any true emotion with his character, but you could predict how everything was going to go down later. So you're waiting for a twist that you already figured out many minutes before. There's a rivalry set up between Agent H, Hemsworth, and Agent C, played by Rafe Spall, and seeing where their rivalry kind of ends up, I was like, man, that could have been really good, and it could have been a really great character growth thing for both of them. But the way they introduced the rivalry, it's so abrupt and it's so quick. You feel like Agent C just hates him just because, I don't like your attitude, but he's very quick to like start threatening to neuralize him and get him out of there. He's very quick to insult him any minute. And it's like, that's not how you should introduce his character, because now I don't like you at all, C, and I don't really want to root for you later when they try to redeem you. And a rivalry would make sense between two agents, because Chris Hemsworth's agent, he is very much of a goofball, very much arrogant. So a rivalry between someone who's like clearly better than him, but just isn't as charming as him, would make sense, but instead it just feels so underwritten and unfunny, and it just didn't feel like any of these two characters were impacted by each other at all. That's another thing I wanted to mention about the funny aspect of this movie. Sure, Pawnee was funny, and occasionally Hemsworth and Thompson will have some funny banter between each other, but for the majority of this movie, I was not really laughing at all, and I wasn't really having that much of a good time. And it could be one of two things: either the jokes themselves just aren't that funny, or two, the editing really ruined a lot of the timing of the jokes. Like, there's a couple moments where I was like, wait, what are they going for? Oh, it's a joke. They're going for a joke. Oh, haha. And it was literally all because of the editing that they had going on with it. Tessa Thompson's introduction, when she's getting her gear, in the trailer, they don't really show you what they're actually doing with the scene. Like, in the trailer, like, she does like that turn, does like a little like a small smile. In this one, it's like hyperly edited with like a beat in the background, and that one shot from the trailer where Tessa Thompson smiles. It's not like a turn, faint smile. It's like a turn, cut to smile huge already, and she's like freaking out, and like these, it's so poorly edited. And I was shocked that they actually went with that direction. I was surprised they didn't cut out the music and have Danny Elfman do something that's like kind of like an important like swelling moment, like da 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 da, or something like that, where she's getting her gear, she's really feeling proud about herself, or some musical cue that shows that at all. But instead, it was just the annoying editing, and I was so irritated by that. Traditionally, with the Men in Black movies, a lot of the alien designs look cool, and they still do here, but that's only about half of the movie. The other half, they don't look very good at all, honestly. There's a lot of bad green screen moments. There's one moment of CGI where I was like, okay, stop. You can't do this anymore. Stop relying on CGI. Can you at least do some practical effects here, please? There's one moment where the voice actor doing the dub over the alien doesn't look like it fits at all, and it felt so awkward. Honestly, guys, I'm just really bleh towards this movie. I'm very in the middle on it. Like, there's stuff that I did like Hemsworth and Thompson. Obviously, they work well together, and you can get some joy just seeing them, pretty much. Pawnee's the only character that I thought really worked, like, all the way around. The RZA sequence, when they go to her island and there's two fight sequences going on, is really fun, but even that one, now that I'm remembering, even that one is kind of ruined by something involving Tessa Thompson's young girl backstory. It's so predictable when what they do with that, like, oh, this is going to show up later, and the way the RZA sequence concludes, it's exactly what you'd expect. So even that was kind of, as much as I liked that sequence, the way it ended was still really annoying. The CGI can look impressive at times as far as their designs, but a lot of it looks really bad. The plot is just so generic and one-dimensional. I was hoping that at least F. Gary Gray's direction could help elevate that, or if the actors could help elevate it with their characters, what their characters had going on. But at the end of the day, there's just not that much going on. And I thought the whole point of this international tagline was to try to see where this franchise could go other than what we've already seen before. But if we're just going to keep doing the same thing, just with some minor differences that don't really matter all that much since everything else is kind of falling flat, then what's the point? I'm gonna give Men in Black International a C. I like it better than Men in Black 2 because Men in Black 2's plot isn't as focused as this one is, I guess, but this one is definitely one of the most generic entries in the Men in Black series. Men in Black and Men in Black 3 are still the best movies that this series has had to offer, and as much as I'm a fan of F. Gary Gray's other action movies and just other movies that he's done that aren't action thriller movies, it's just a really big disappointment to see that it didn't feel like his film or vision at all. But if you've seen Men in Black International, leave in the comments below what you thought of it, and as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.